Welcome to the Therapist Book Club, where two therapists dive into their favorite books and the powerful mental health themes they uncover.
Whether you're here for literary inspiration, therapeutic tools, or just some lighthearted conversation, you've found the right place.
So get cozy and let's dive into the pages together.
All right, welcome back for another episode. We're here with some more children's books for you. We are bringing some books that might help with kiddos with like persistent negative thinking or noticing all the bad things that are happening and helping to broaden the perspective or shift thinking to kind of influence the mood or future behaviors in a positive direction. So do you want to jump in and share what you have with us?
Sure. I actually picked this book up at a writing conference and I loved it. I thought it was adorable. It's by Ana Siqueira. I hope I said that right because I actually follow her on Twitter. Now I'm gonna have to message her and say sorry. Her book, La Mala Suerte, is following me. So bad luck is following me. And it follows this child. I just loved the illustrations in this too, by the way. He starts out with like, my life is perfect. And he opens like an umbrella in the house because he's like, I'm perfect. Everything's great. But then he starts to have some bad things happen. He got a, bad score on a test. In soccer, he fell. He was running too fast and he fell. He didn't study for a test and he failed that. The next day, he wasn't paying attention and he fell in front of the whole entire school. During soccer practice, he was distracted and kept getting scored on. And so all these things are happening and he starts to think, La Mala Suerte is following me. I've got the bad luck and it's because I opened the umbrella and da da da. So anyway, then he has a conversation with his family and they start to talk about how you can make your own luck. So oh yeah, here we go. Even at the end, I love this. Like they're like, oh no, a black cat. But he's like, nah, I make my own luck. And so they talk about the ways and the strategies that he can manage his own luck. Him and his mom. And they talk about one, they make a plan. Like if I slow down and if I'm watching where I'm going, if I study hard for tests, if I practice with my abuelo, and if I can slow down my body, I can control my luck. And so I love this because I think kids, okay, so magical thinking is age appropriate for children. And they come in with magical thinking all the time that like, I am just bad luck. My daughter actually says that. I'm just bad luck. I'm just unlucky. Like as if they did something and now this, and I like in the book, there is like a dark cloud that looks like it's following after him or like a dark shadow. And he keeps saying like, La mala suerte, or suerte. And, anyway, I think kids do have that magical thinking that they can have, the world can just be out to get them, that they can have that bad luck. But the reality is you can control your luck.
Yep.
Well, actually, let me back up because in CBT, you think about that every time we have a thought and an emotion and an outcome, it strengthens the belief that we have about the world and about ourselves. And so the more things he goes through, the stronger that belief that I have la mala suerte following me around.
And then he's going to see it even more in many more circumstances. Yes.
Yep. Yes. But the reality is that there's some strategies. This is what we do in CBT therapy with kids. There's strategies that you could do that helps you control your own luck.
Yes.
So I love that book. I think it's super fun. I mean, I love that it's very cultural based as well, which I think here in Utah, we need all the diversity we can get.
We have a ton of Spanish speakers here in Utah, and having some diverse books to support your diverse client backgrounds is really important. The kids see themselves in the stories that you're reading with them. I think that's
even a kid who's not Hispanic needs to see needs to because I'm like, because this is our world.
Yeah.
There just is diversity. And the more that kids just see one type of toy and one type of book and one type of thing, the less they'll see that the world is a diverse world. But so I love that. It's I don't know if the author meant that. There's not, I didn't see her talk about CBT specifically, but I actually love taking, we have the books that are written specifically CBT based and they hit you over the head with those messages. I love these books that are a little bit more gentle with their message so that in our offices we can use these stories in the ways that we need to use them. So if you had a child walk in and say, I just have bad luck or I'm unlucky, this would be such a good conversation.
Bad things always happen to me. Nothing good ever happens. I hear that
This
a
is
lot.
I would definitely say this is also a book that I would read. I do puppet therapy. I would bring the puppet in and read the story, and then the puppet would talk about being so unlucky and have the child, um, have my client child join with me with some problem solving with my puppets. So
Mhm.
that's
Yeah,
this is the type of when they're like too straightforward moral based, it's harder to bring the puppet in because then it's not the puppet story that's teaching, if that makes sense. So
I
anyway, this is a good one for things like that, for puppet stories and things.
love that. The book I brought is more direct, is more very clearly like CBT based. It's Tiger, Tiger, Is It True? This one's by Byron Katie, and Hans Wilhelm. And so Tiger starts out his day like having bad things happening to him. Like he got out of bed on the wrong side. He falls down on all of his toys, so bad things are happening.
Aw.
His parents are arguing and they're not paying him any attention, and he's just a ghost in the family. And at school, he's being picked last at games. All these bad things are happening again, similar to your story. And everything felt so terrible. He was so down in the dumps, and he goes and cries at the pond, and a turtle comes over and starts to teach him. So Turtle is this wise character who's coming to teach him that um about the power of his thoughts and how his thoughts can change. Um, and when his thoughts can change, he might see things from a different perspective and feel a different type of way. So he helps Tiger understand how he feels inside when he has certain thoughts. So this is like the traditional CBT kind of triangle of like, or the cycle of like your thoughts influence your emotions and your emotions influence your behaviors, and all of it works together. And then there are 4 questions that you can pose to your client or your child if you're doing this with your kid. Is it true? Can you absolutely know that it's true? How do you react, or what happens when you believe that thought? And who would you be without the thought? And then finding different examples of turning those things around. So being able to turn those thoughts around into other thoughts. So some really structured tools
Mhm.
built into the book. And at the end, Tiger feels like, oh, my life isn't so bad. There are actually good parts of this life when I can think about these things in a different way.
I love that because, in TFCBT, in the prac skills, we're trying to teach kids about cognitive thinking, right? Cognitions, how to identify. We're looking at cognitive restructuring, blah, blah, blah. So if you've done the TFCBT training, you know exactly what I'm talking about. When they start training on that, you're like, how is a 5-year-old going to understand that concept? But it sounds like this book would be a really great way to introduce, and I think that's why we need some straightforward CBT stuff when we're trying to introduce them to like cognitive restructuring so they can do that for their narrative. We do need some of those. And this sounds like when you were explaining it, I was like, oh, that's the perfect place to use it is for all the TFCBT clinicians out there.
I've used this with little client, like the youngest I've used this with is she's like 6 years old, is a client I've used this with, to help getting the momentum going of understanding that even that they are having thoughts. Like,
Mm,
as so many little kids and maybe even grown-ups too, we think
uh-huh.
the first thing that comes is the feeling, but often there's a thought that's influencing the feeling. And it's hard for these little brains to understand that there is a thought or something that's happening before the feeling comes in. So that's how I've used this, is to help introduce even the idea of you're having thoughts.
Yeah. That's such a good point too, because I was just thinking, in the CBT triangle, we often look at like intervening at the feeling, like, oh, you're angry. Okay, let's take some deep breaths. That doesn't actually change, right? Like what if we could intervene at like the thought level? If they recognize that there's a certain thought at play and we try to introduce a new thought or a new way of thinking, well,
Mhm.
now we can avoid, like I always think CBT is kind of funny for some things. Like um if your child's having a meltdown, a child with like a disability is having a meltdown, you teach them to just take a deep breath.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's like trying to take a squirt bottle to fire, and not because they're bad or big. It's just like, man, they have so many bigger things going on in their lives that taking a deep breath might help in that 1 second, maybe, but doesn't get to the root of things. And so, yeah, going back to the thought
Yeah.
can have the bigger impact than just taking the deep breaths when the feeling is happening.
Yeah. So like in the example of your story, the boy, what was one of the things that happened to him that was bad luck?
Oh, he failed his test.
Okay. So if he's thinking, his thought is, I just have bad luck following me everywhere. He's going to believe and have this feeling of like disappointment and like out of control and being a victim. Like all of that's going to be how he feels. But if he could interrupt that thought, those thoughts of like, oh, I probably just didn't study as hard as I needed to, or I need more help from my teacher and I'm going to ask for it next time. Those thoughts are going to create a more helpful narrative for him in the future. But if you don't even realize you're having thoughts, that's a hard place to intervene if you don't realize that the thoughts are contributing.
Yeah, I like the questions that they posed. Like, is it true? Here's how I frame it. What's the evidence that you have that it's true? Like, I guess I don't have, say, evidence to a young kid, but actually a lot of ages will know that. But like, how do we know that's true? But then I want to ask questions more like, and what part of this can you control?
Yes.
And for me, I'm like, that's going to get more change than like, oh, okay, well, then take a deep breath. And
Mhm.
I'm not taking away from coping skills. We definitely need those because we get into these situations, we cannot do this type of cognitive thinking until we are calm.
Yeah. When your emotions are skyrocket, you can't do this, the thinking part of it.
Yes. Yeah. So the coping skills I think are really, really important. But man, working at the thought level and yeah, is it true?
Mhm.
What and but here's what's tricky because I'm like, so this boy would say, "What's the evidence?" This is why I say it those ways. What's the evidence? Well, he would have like, yeah, I took that test, and then all the kids were, I tripped and fell, and all the kids were scoring goals on me. Okay, and which of those things, like, what do you have in your control?
Mhm.
That's when we start to problem solve. Like, oh, when it's la mala suerte,
I don't have any
I
control.
don't have control, so I can't change it, right?
Yeah.
But once he started to see that like he could make his own luck,
Mhm.
quote unquote, make his own luck, but like when he could do the things that he could have more control over his outcomes.
Mhm.
And I think that's just like it's such a strong lesson for kids, to start problem solving and looking at like, what's the, where can I make change here?
Yeah. Like in the tiger story, he's really down on like his friends picked him last, so he felt like none of his friends liked him. And so when Turtle poses that question, is that true? Do all your friends really hate you? And then he finds evidence to prove the contrary. So he finds evidence of reasons why his friends actually do love him and care about him. And
Mhm.
like this one example isn't true about all scenarios. And it's not that catastrophizing thoughts that we sometimes get into. And it helps I think that asking, is it true, can help broaden and like sometimes we get so narrowly focused in our thoughts. And asking, is it true, kind of opens the door for more options to be true, which I think is a cool thing for your brain to stop being so focused on just one outcome or one result.
I have this Brene Brown quote I love so much, and it is the secret to adulthood. I know we're talking about children. Secret to adulthood is to first accept yourself and expect more from yourself.
Mhm.
And so you kind of said that, right? So he had to first challenge the thought, but what if he really is not good at playing whatever game they were playing?
Mhm.
Like, what if you aren't good at that?
And that's why you're picked last.
Yes, so are there things we can do? We can accept ourselves and say, our friends still love me. This doesn't change my value as a person. And can I grow in a certain way? Is there a growth opportunity here? So, yeah, I don't really know how to catch the ball, or I don't really know how to play soccer. So, mom, dad, can you help me learn that? Or, hey, if there's a Parks and Rec class where I can go out and play a little bit, so I can match with my friends, or like meet their levels or whatever. I don't think we have to be afraid of growth opportunities for our kids, right? Like no one grows from shame. So we
Yeah.
can't grow from my friends hate me. But I don't know, I don't think it's
Yeah,
bad
but
for them.
if the thought is they picked me last because I can't catch the ball,
Yeah,
that
let's
might be
learn to catch the ball.
that might be true. You can't catch the ball and that's why they picked you. And then if it is true, like you said, that opens up the door for some growth opportunities. I really want to learn how to catch the ball next time. So
Hmm.
mom, can you sign me up for a class? Or can we practice in the backyard? Whatever. But
Yeah.
if it's stuck in, everybody hates me, nobody likes me, you just want to hide and cry, you're not growing. You're not growing as a person.
Have you ever heard the song? My dad will love that I'm saying this. Nobody likes me. Everybody hates me. I guess I'll go eat worms. I thought that's what you were quoting for a second there.
I was.
Great. I'm glad I picked up on
But
that.
that's where our brains go. And that's not true.
Yes. Well, and I think we limit the control that kids can have by like just kind of placating. You're fine. It's fine. And it is fine. You're
It is.
fine. And if you'd like to learn, great. I'm happy to help you. If you don't want to learn, that's fine. We don't have to love everything in this world. Find something else that you can shine in.
And it might also be true that your friends love you even when you can't catch a ball.
I love that. I think we should leave it on that.
Okay. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back with more kids' books in the future and more grown-up books too. See ya. Thanks for joining us on the Therapist Book Club. We hope today's conversation inspired you to explore new stories and perspectives.
Don't forget to follow us for more episodes, share your favorite books with us, and join the conversation on how books and mental health connect on our social media channels.
Until next time, keep reading, keep growing, and remember, your story matters.